It's interesting to me that despite all of our powers and all the time we have, many of us are still not content. They will never be content. We are creatures of ambition and greed after all. Ones who can never have enough. And sure as all things, whenever you think you have found the worst and most greedy of our kind, you learn that there is another, just as bad, around the corner. Today I wish to discuss another bloodline of kindred, one that is also known for their horrid behaviors, but they take it in a more practical sense. See, they don't do horrid things because they enjoy them. No, that's silly, that's a waste of time. They do it purely for practical reasons. After all, you would never learn of one's true pain threshold till you can keep someone there for weeks at a time. See, there is a bloodline of La Sombra known as the Kiasyd, or sometimes known as the Weirdlings, for they stand out quite a bit due to their experiments they did on themselves. See, unlike most La Sombra, the Kiasyd care little for keeping in contact with mortals and controlling them. They allowed themselves to change, to become separate from humans in a way that is obvious just from the way they look. The same way the Tzimisce do so, but not through flesh crafting, no. I'll save the exact details for later, but the founder of their bloodline managed to consume Fey blood. Well, that's actually normal, not much out of the ordinary. We can all feed on the Fey. But the things that makes this extraordinary is that he managed to feed on them while keeping some of their original powers. Meaning, well, all sorts of things. This is something that should have been impossible, and indeed, no one has ever been able to recreate this. Not even them. But this makes them a sort of Fey-touched bloodline of La Sombra, which is as dangerous as it sounds. It's quite easy to spot them too, as their skin tends to be a bit off. Texture-wise, it's almost closer to a leathery skin than actual natural human, and they tend to have different colours too. They might be a shade of light blue, or an unnatural bleach white, or perhaps even a subtle purple, colours you would never actually see on a mortal. Their eyes also have unusual colours as well, with many of them having the whites of their eyes replaced with black, and some interesting coloured irises. Or sometimes, and the more likely one, is their entire eyes are pitch black. Some of them even have pointed ears too, a very Fey-like trait, and if their looks don't immediately give them away, their dress and manners will, for they have a sort of clan culture of their own, despite them only being but a bloodline. One which is a bit stuck in the past, for they still act and talk like they were in Victorian times, with all the dramatic flair that we had back then. Some also speak often in riddles, and I even know of one who spoke entirely in rhyme. But for the most part, they all speak like normal Victorian aristocrats. They are very eccentric in this regard, even for my tastes. While I would say someone was boring and of little note, a Kiasyd would say he was, in the manner of many men, lacking an extraordinary countenance, and indeed possessed of rudimentary intelligence, making his bearing quite mild, or something of that nature. Young neonates actually struggle to talk to them for this reason. All of them, even the newly embraced, speak like elders, and this is a trait they will develop quickly after their embrace. But they are also very much a learned bloodline, for they pride themselves on their knowledge and collections. Many of them see themselves as scholars and librarians, keepers of forbidden secrets and spells, so much so that they would upstart the Tremere in this aspect. As it is one thing to have 20 books on the lupines, it is another to have the exact same collection and one of them chained to your wall. The Tremere still do that sort of thing, by the way. They at least just try to hide it in a basement somewhere, and half of them aren't in the know. But the main thing that sets them apart from the Tremere is their solitary nature, for they are loners at heart and hate interacting with others of any sort or persuasion unless they need to. They don't even like the other Kiasyd, and if they are walking around and being active, it is most likely to add to their collection or to have another experiment in need of field testing. If a Kiasyd is willingly interacting with you, they must like you quite a bit. But they are also a lot more hands-on. Like I said before, they don't just collect things, but experiment on them as well. Often sometimes themselves, once they think it's something that can actually aid them. The core method of their experiments is actually less like magical study and more like a form of twisted alchemy. And in this endeavor, is where they do some of the most horrid acts you can imagine, often solely just to help in their experiments. While the majority of them can be found in the Sabbat, that is in no way because of their loyalty or because their ideals collide. It is purely because their parent clan, that of the La Sombra, are still mostly within the Sabbat. Many Kiasyd can be found in the Camarilla, but I would say that the majority of them, even the ones that claim allegiance, are truly independent. They only follow the rules of who's in charge so that they would be left alone, and would probably swap sides without a second thought should another take over. They are also said to feed in some of the most absolutely horrid ways you can imagine. This is the only part of their nature that makes them actually seem like they enjoy doing some of the things they do. It is often said that they can only feed on children or virgins, and that they must torture them first and do other horrible, unspeakable acts. The validity of these is questionable, but I've heard that some Tzimisce say that the Kiasyd are their kindred spirits in this aspect. I've even heard some say that they take it too far. And when a Tzimisce is telling you you're taking something too far, perhaps you should stop. But their Fey blood has also given them a weakness, one that's actually quite easy to exploit, that they share with many of the changelings. And it's simply iron, or cold iron as they know it, which is actually a form of wrought iron. In essence, it's actually a pure iron with no other metals. This makes it considerably weaker and almost useless compared to modern metals, but not for the Fae, for it magically hurts them. No doubt you have seen my display pieces by now. Perhaps you've noticed my sword. The one I have spent a fortune trying to maintain. The one I keep in a glass case. Well, that sword is almost as old as me, for it is the sword I wielded as a mortal man, oh so long ago now. It is made of pure iron, but that is only because my people didn't actually know how to make anything better at the time. I almost never use that sword now. It's more of a reminder than anything else, to make me remember where I am from and how I got. But on a few small occasions, it has tasted Kiasyd blood. And I can tell you, it burns them like sunlight does us. But anyway, back to the topic at hand. I wish to briefly go over their origin before I talk of their powers. See, their bloodline started with one Marconius at around the year 300. In life he was a mage, quite a powerful one I have heard, as was his sister, Horotsutar. And while Marconius studied the Abyss and Death, Horotsutar studied the Fae, and had many dealings of an unknown origin with them. Eventually, Marconius's experiments caught the attention of a La Sombra, who embraced him. For one reason or another, he drained his sister dry, killing her. Some sources say he had no control at the time, although this is mostly lost to history. But because she had an unknown connection to the Fae, when he drank from her, it changed him forever, making him the first Kiasyd. It is also said shortly after, he entered a sort of cocoon and metamorphosized, changing his skin and eyes, which is probably the reason their bloodline uses a butterfly to represent them. Or that in its connection to the Fae, for it's similar to their symbol. All those he embraced were like him, but thankfully I don't think they had to cocoon themselves. He's also probably still out there, but it matters little, for, like his clan, he prefers to remain alone. But now let us get into their powers and disciplines, for this is where the unique aspects of their blood come into play. Well, sort of. See, it's actually quite hard to say truly what they have and how they work, but I will try and explain them as best I can. I believe they have the disciplines of Dominate, Oblivion, and what they call Mythosaria. I'll get the obvious one out the way first. They have Dominate, and they use it in the exact same ways and styles that the La Sombra do, so I won't repeat myself too much on this one, but I will talk about one that I know. See, many Kiasyd keep living things for research purposes or as trophies or something like that, but I know of one who is very skilled in Dominate, of the name Edward Hawkthorne. He uses his powers to put all of his would-be possessions into a trance. He gives them fake senses. He would make them perceive themselves as having the perfect life of their dreams. They are happy and everything is wonderful. A week later, in reality, they are slumped over, drooling while stuck in a cage, and a tube hooked into their neck occasionally saps blood from them. But, to them, everything's wonderful. It's actually a way that's quite cruel, but makes it seem almost humane how he does it. They also have the powers of oblivion, like other La Sombra, but unlike them, they study it, much in the same way that blood mages do thaumaturgy. Meaning, as far as my knowledge, they are the only group of kindred that know both the La Sombra powers of oblivion and the other aspects of shadow magic, as in necromancy. While many individuals have studied both, it is rare to see a group do it like this, and they are indeed quite skilled in both. I know of one Kiasyd by the name of Valerie Forbes. She's Scottish, and where I get a lot of my magical artifacts from. The sort Camarilla don't usually give away, but you didn't hear that from me. She owns a castle on an island not too far from the northern coast, and she staffs it with zombies. She dresses them up and makes sure they're not falling apart, but there's only so much you can do for a zombie. She's also delightful company. We've had many conversations into the late hours. I also think she has a bit of a soft spot for me, as she never gives away artifacts for anyone without making a very crucial deal, and she also never talks to anyone as well. She usually hushes them away, but I find her doors are always open to me. But anyway, back to the topic at hand. They have one more unique power, quite a strange one at that. It's technically a form of magic known as mythosaria, something we kindred should not be able to do, but there's a little bit of complexity that explains how it works. See, this is only possible because of their bit of Fae blood. It basically gives them some of the Fae's powers, but I haven't got all night and so cannot begin to describe how the Fae work. Just know that it's not like spells of traditional magic, more of a natural thing, akin to how technically some of our universal vampire powers are from magic, but they are not magecraft. I should also note it is impossible for anyone other than them to use these powers, without of course directly diablerizing one of them, as is the case with many unique powers that some bloodlines possess. Once you have a bit of that blood in you, it is essentially unlocked, shall I say. But they can do all sorts of things with mythosaria, such as know if someone is a Fae in disguise, or even sense if a statement is a lie or not. Some can even summon weaker Fae like a goblin or something, or even enchant objects. I know of one who can force people to contemplate any riddle that is spoken aloud, even paradoxes, and legends say that they can turn people to stone, and even temporarily become immortal for a single day. I should also note that some of them have some of the minor abilities of the Fae, but again I do not have time to go into detail. Another night I'm sure. But you see, I am all too familiar with the powers of the Kiasyd. For the first supernatural being I ever faced, back when I was a mortal man, was a Kiasyd. It is the main reason I keep that sword, for I used it to slay one. The name I knew him by was Cormac, and his goal was to destroy my tribe, for we were invaders of the British Isles at the time. He slaughtered so many of my tribe, and were it not for his own pride and stupidity, he would have me as well. See, swords were actually pretty rare during my time, and he cockily screamed how even if we could hit him, we could not harm him. So he proclaimed that your greatest warrior could get a free hit. So I rushed forward with my cold iron sword, plunged it into his chest, and split him in half. The look of shock on his face as he turned into a withered corpse was priceless to me. No doubt the reason he did that was because of Celtic legends where Fae creatures do that sort of thing and usually survive and teach that person a lesson, or just kill them, or do some weird thing like turn someone into spiders. Ugh. Fae creatures are ridiculous at times. He probably didn't even know of his own weakness, since the bloodline was still brand new around that time. They are tied to the Fae in many aspects like that due to their unique blood, speaking in weird riddles and making decisions that seem baffling to us. They are alien to both us and the Changelings, as the Fae call themselves, but not quite a hybrid or middle ground. They are definitely closer to true kindred than anything else, but still far alone. Their love of knowledge and experiments hides their cruelty, but their old Victorian mannerisms give them a bizarre, otherworldly feel. But make no mistake, the Kiasyd are one to keep an eye on. While no kindred should ever be underestimated, you should never forget that the Kiasyd deliberately try to change and alter themselves, and they love to study things not natural to them or the world at large. Even their unique Fey powers are something not even they can fully understand. All this adds up to mean you could never truly know what they are going to do next. They perhaps might not even know. Thank you for listening to my tales. I'm the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me. But, till next time, meet fellow traveller, have a good day.